The girl in chains. The air inside the alien camp was thick with silence. Commander Jace walked slowly between the holding cells, his boots echoing on the cold floor. The other soldiers stayed back. They didn't like coming here. Even though the war was almost over, the fear hadn't left their bones. Each cell held something dangerous. Prisoners from different alien worlds. Strong, angry, beaten, but still full of hate. Some bared their teeth. Some hissed. Others simply stared with cold eyes. But one cell was different. Jace paused when he saw her. She sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, chained at the wrists and ankles. Her skin was a pale violet color. Her hair was silver like threads of moonlight falling gently around her face. But what caught Jace were her eyes. They were not full of hate. They were full of something else. Something softer. Hope. Jace read the report again. Female. Warrior class. Highly dangerous. Do not engage. But she didn't look dangerous. Her arms were thin. There were bruises on her skin and dried blood at the corner of her lip. Someone had hit her, maybe more than once. Yet, she didn't cry or scream. She just stared at him with those quiet eyes. "What's her name?" Jace asked the guard beside him. "No name. She hasn't spoken once since we caught her," the guard replied. "And sir, I'd stay away. They say she's waiting for something." Creeps, the men out. Waiting for what? No idea. But she doesn't eat much, doesn't sleep. Just sits there, watching. Jace stepped closer to the glass. Her eyes followed him. He wasn't sure why, but he couldn't look away. "I'm Commander Jace. Do you understand me?" he asked, his voice calm. The girl didn't move. "I know your kind speaks our language. The translators picked up fragments when your people attacked Colony 11. Still no answer." Jace sighed and turned to leave. That's when he heard it. A whisper. So soft he almost missed it. Soon. He froze and looked back. The girl was staring at him. Her lips had moved. "What did you say?" he asked, stepping back to the glass. But she was quiet again, like she hadn't spoken at all. The guard looked nervous. "You heard that too, right?" Jace nodded slowly. "Yes, I did." That night Jace couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her, about the way she looked at him. It wasn't like the others. It wasn't hate or fear. It was something else. Trust? No, that was impossible. She had no reason to trust him. But then why did she speak only to him? He replayed the moment again and again in his mind. Soon. What did that mean? He opened the file again. No name. Species. Unknown variant of the Varathi. Female. Early adult. Captured during the Battle of Duskfield Ridge. Resistance level. Low. Threat level. Unknown. She shouldn't matter. The war was ending. Peace talks were happening. This camp would be emptied soon. And yet, why did he feel like she was the key to something bigger? Jace got out of bed and dressed quietly. The base was still. It was past midnight. He told himself it was just a quick check. Nothing more. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. When he reached her cell again, she was awake. Sitting in the same place. Her eyes met his. "You said something earlier," Jace said softly. "Why?" The girl didn't answer. He stepped closer. "Who are you?" She looked at his hand resting against the glass. Then she did something strange. She lifted her own hand and placed it on the glass, right where his was. A thin layer separated them, but Jace could feel the warmth of her skin through it. "What are you waiting for?" he asked. Her lips moved again. This time she said it clearly. "You." Jace's breath caught. Before he could say anything else, footsteps echoed behind him. Another guard. "Commander? What are you doing here?" Jace turned quickly. "Just checking the cells." "At this hour?" "You can go back." I'm done here. The guard hesitated, then nodded and walked away. When Jace turned back to the cell, the girl had already lowered her hand. She was staring at the floor again, silent, but the echo of her words stayed with him. You. Commander Jace left the cell block that night with a question burning in his mind. Who was this girl? And why did it feel like his future just changed forever? Forbidden connection. The morning came with cold light. Even though the camp was buried deep underground, time still moved. Alarms buzzed. Doors hissed open. Guards made their rounds like machines. But Jace couldn't forget her voice. She had whispered one word, not out of fear, not to beg, not even to trick him. You. It echoed in his head, louder than any command he had ever followed. He stared at his reflection in the mirror above the sink in his private quarters. A line of sweat dripped down his temple. He looked tired. His eyes, once sharp and full of pride, now seemed heavy, not from war but from confusion. He had seen thousands of enemies, led missions through fire and chaos. He had made peace with death. But this girl, she made him feel something he couldn't name. Something ancient. Something dangerous. She had touched the glass, and somehow, it felt real. Jace made up his mind. This time he didn't go through the main hallway. He used the side access route, swiping his clearance chip twice and muttering a false report about a systems check. The guards didn't question him. They wouldn't dare. Cell 17. She was already standing when he arrived, like she had been waiting all night. Her silver hair shimmered under the dim light, and her eyes locked onto his before the door even finished opening. This time, Jace didn't stop at the glass. He stepped into the cell. A soft hiss filled the air as the barrier dissolved behind him. The door sealed. Only the sound of his breathing and hers remained. You knew I would come back, Jace said quietly. She nodded once. He noticed then. The marks on her skin. They weren't just bruises. They were symbols. Lines that ran across, her arms and neck glowing faintly like veins filled with starlight. Those weren't there before, he whispered. They wake when I speak the truth, she answered. Her voice, it wasn't harsh or alien. It was calm, melodic, like music spoken through water. Who are you? Jace asked again. My name is Solari, she said. I am warrior-born, but I was never meant to fight humans. Then why were you captured during battle? I surrendered. The word hit him like a blow. You surrendered on purpose? She nodded again. Because I needed to find you. Jace stepped closer. Confusion turned to tension. His instincts were screaming. His training told him this was a trap, that she was a spy, that she would strike any moment. But his heart said something else. Why me? He asked. Solari didn't answer right away. She looked at his hands. Then she sat down and motioned for him to sit across from her. Long before the war, my people discovered something in the ancient black. A place beyond mapped stars. A structure, a voice, a message buried in the stars. Jace sat barely breathing. The voice said a seed had been placed inside another race, she continued. A race still young, still learning, but destined to rise, and that one day that seed would bloom, when the right one touched the right soul. Jace blinked. You think that's me? I don't think, she said. I know. He shook his head slowly. This sounds like myth. It is more than that. I saw you, in a vision when I was a child. I thought it was a dream. Then I saw your face during the battle. And I knew. She reached out, but stopped halfway. May I? She asked. Jace hesitated. His training screamed no, but his heart was louder. This time, he nodded. Solari gently touched his hand. A spark, not like fire, more like memory. He felt warmth spread through his fingers. Images rushed through his mind, places he had never seen. Stars being born, planets crumbling, machines that looked alive, and a shape, A glowing spiral, pulsing like a heartbeat. His breath caught. He pulled back his hand. "What was that?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Your soul remembering," Solari said softly. "The seed is in you. It sleeps, but now it stirs." Jace stood quickly, hands clenched. "This is insane. You're manipulating me." "No," she whispered. "I waited for you my whole life. I gave myself up. I let them chain me. All for this moment." He backed toward the door. "I can't. I need time." Celery didn't follow. "You felt it, didn't you?" she asked gently. "Even now, your hand still remembers mine." He looked down. The spot where they touched. It was glowing faintly, like moonlight on his skin. Jace turned and rushed out, heart-pounding, breath short. As the door sealed behind him, Solari closed her eyes and whispered again. "Soon." Secrets under the skin. Jace sat alone in the observation tower above the main base, far from the noise of soldiers and machines. The skies outside were black, but he could still see distant stars through the curved glass. They blinked softly, like quiet eyes watching from a cold universe. He had taken off his glove. His hand still glowed, not bright, not hot, just there. A soft shimmer along his skin, like silver dust had soaked into his veins. It pulsed now and then in rhythm with his heartbeat. He hadn't told anyone. Not the captain, not the medical team, not even the AI logs that watched every move inside the facility. Jace didn't know why. Maybe part of him was afraid they'd call him crazy. Maybe part of him already believed he was. Or maybe, deep down, he didn't want to share what happened. It had felt personal, like the touch awakened something inside him that had waited far too long. Later that day, Jace accessed the alien archive again, something only high-clearance officers could do. He searched for Solari's kind. Not the standard Varathi data, but the older files, the forgotten ones. And there it was, an old war report from 37 years ago. A scout team had stumbled across an ancient ruin on a dead moon. The ruins were covered in spiral markings, the same shape now glowing on his hand. The report mentioned strange signals, whispers in their dreams. Only one scout had made it back. His final transmission? A single word. Soon. Jace stared at the screen, chills crawling down his spine. He remembered Solari's voice. Soft, steady, full of that same word. Soon. But what did it mean? He returned to the cell that night. The guard on duty didn't question him anymore. Rumors were already spreading that the commander had taken a strange interest in the silver-haired prisoner, but no one dared speak it out loud. Solari was standing again, waiting. This time, she didn't speak first. Jace stepped inside slowly and sat down in front of her. He didn't wear his gloves. "I need answers," he said. She nodded. "Then I will give them." "Why me?" "Because your blood carries something old, something planted by those who came before both our kinds. They were not gods. They were not monsters. They were teachers. They shaped the stars, then disappeared. But, before they left, they made sure their knowledge would not die. By putting it inside humans? Not all humans. Only a few. 1 in a billion. It is not in the body. It's in the soul." Jace frowned. "Souls? That's not science." Solari tilted her head gently. "Your science calls it something else. Pattern recognition. Quantum echoes. Doesn't matter what you name it. The truth is still truth." Jace showed her his hand. "This mark, it's real." "Yes, and it means the seed has awakened. What happens now?" She was quiet for a moment. Her eyes softened. "You begin to remember. Not like memory from childhood. Older, deeper. You may see stars you've never visited, speak words you don't know, dream things that feel more real than waking life." Jace leaned back, rubbing his temple. "That already started." She looked at him with something like sadness. "And it will grow stronger. Faster. Until your mind cannot hold it anymore. Unless it is shared." Shared with who? Me, she said. We were both chosen. I carry the key, you carry the door. Only together can we open what waits beyond. Jace stared at her. Why not just take it, extract it, scan me, copy the data like everything else? Because it cannot be stolen. It must be offered. Offered? Through trust. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're asking me to trust you? A prisoner from a race that tried to wipe out my colonies? Yes, she said. And I trusted you first. I surrendered myself. I sat in this cage for weeks. I spoke your words when mine were taken. I did not fight. I waited. I hoped. And when you touched my hand, the seed answered. Jace looked down again. The mark was brighter now, pulsing, almost alive. He reached toward her slowly. She didn't flinch. Their fingers met again, skin on skin. But this time, it wasn't just warmth. A rush of color filled his mind. Blue oceans, massive towers built of crystal, winged shapes flying through silver skies, beings made of light speaking in spiral tones. It all surged through him like wind across an open field. He gasped and pulled back, falling to his knees. His heart was racing. His hands were shaking. What was that? Solari knelt beside him. Your first glimpse of the truth. Jace looked at her. What truth? Her voice was soft. That you were never meant to be just human. The touch, the next day, the base trembled under, the weight of things Jace could no longer ignore. Outside, the war was slowing down. Diplomats spoke of peace. Officials smiled on distant screens. But here, deep beneath the surface of the war zone, Jace was changing. He stood in front of the mirror, again. The mark on his palm was no longer just a faint shimmer. It now pulsed with color, soft white, fading into silver, then deep blue. It moved like breath. It responded to thought. He had tried to cover it with gloves, even bandages, but the glow still leaked through. When he touched the wall, it vibrated, slightly. Machines near him began to flicker. The base AI had sent 3 error messages that morning, all linked to rooms he passed by. He was becoming something else, and it terrified him. But more than that, it fascinated him. He returned to Solari's cell without waiting for orders. This time, he didn't sneak. He walked straight through the command center. His eyes met the guards. They moved aside. They didn't ask questions anymore. They saw the mark on his hand and chose silence. Solari stood in the middle of the room, eyes closed. Her long silver hair floated around her face even though the air was still. She was humming, a sound not from any language Jace knew. Yet it felt familiar, like hearing a lullaby from a dream he never remembered having. When he stepped inside, she opened her eyes slowly. It's happening, she said before he spoke. Jace nodded. I touched one of the power terminals. He whispered. It shut down. The lights blinked. They said it was a system's fault, but I knew. She stepped closer. You are awakening faster than expected, she said. The seed is reaching deeper into your soul. It knows the time is close. Close. For what? Solari reached for his hand again. Do you trust me now? Jace didn't answer, not with words. He simply opened his hand and let her touch it. When their palms met, everything changed. The walls around them shimmered, like heat waves rising from stone. Jace's knees went weak. The light from his palm shot up his arm, across, his chest to his eyes. He saw stars, galaxies spinning in reverse. He heard voices calling his name in a language he never learned. And then, he saw her. Not Solari. Not as she was now. But Solari standing in a different world, wearing armor of silver and blue, standing before a great gate of light, surrounded by beings not human, not alien, but something older, and beside her was him, a version of himself. Younger yet older, wearing a spiral on his chest, holding her hand. As the vision faded, Jace fell forward. He caught himself on one arm, breathing heavily. Solari knelt beside him again. What did you see? She asked gently. He looked up, his face pale. Us. Another life. Another place. She nodded slowly. It was not the past. It was the first memory of the future. Jace sat up. His hand still glowed, but now there was something new etched around the spiral. Lines, symbols, forming like writing on his skin. What does it mean? He asked. You are becoming the vessel. Celery, said, the one chosen to unlock the gate. Gate? Buried beneath the twin moons of Varen. There is a machine older than time. Built by the ancient race. It is sealed. Locked. They called it the Gate of Voice. Only one who carries both the seed and the signal can open it. And you? He asked. I carry the signal, she said. It was placed in my kind, but we were too broken by war to remember what it was for. I am the last who still hears its song. Jace looked down, the truth becoming heavier with every second. And what's inside this gate? Her answer came like a whisper of wind. The map to peace, or the weapon that ends all life. Silence filled the cell. Outside, the base trembled, again. Sirens began to flash. Jace stood up, his breath steady now. Someone's coming, he said. Solari closed her eyes for a moment. They've felt your energy. They fear what you are becoming. He turned toward the door. Then we need to leave. They will hunt us, then let them try. He reached down and snapped the cuffs from her wrists. They fell to the floor with a heavy clang. For the first time, Solari smiled. Not the smile of an enemy, not the smile of a weapon, but the smile of someone who had waited too long for hope. Together, they walked toward the door. As it slid open, alarms screamed and the war shifted. Hunted by both sides, the sky above the outer zone was not blue. It was red, burned by years of war, choked by the ash of fallen cities and smog from dead machines. Giant black towers stood like broken bones across the wastelands. Somewhere far, beneath the dust and smoke, the ground still remembered peace. But up here, all that remained was fear. Jace ran through the ruins with Solari at his side. They moved like shadows between twisted steel and shattered concrete, careful not to disturb. The drones circling overhead. Jace's heart pounded in his chest, not just from exhaustion, but from what he had become, and what the others now believed he was. He had crossed a line, not just by freeing a prisoner, not just by touching her hand, but by awakening something inside him that none of them understood. The military didn't call him a hero anymore. The last transmission he'd heard from command labeled him with a single word, rogue. And the Alien Council? They had already sent a message too, broadcasted in 6 languages across neutral systems. Bring the human alive. Destroy the signal carrier. They wanted Solari dead, and they wanted whatever was inside Jace. Harvested. He was being hunted, by both his own kind and hers. But somehow in all that chaos it didn't feel wrong. It felt necessary. They reached the old relay station by nightfall. It was buried beneath a ridge of fallen stone, half-eaten by vines and rust. Jace used to train here when he was younger, back when the world still believed in things like strategy, honor, and medals. Now, it was just a ghost. Inside, the air was still. Old terminals blinked softly. The place had power. Barely. Solari sat near a broken console and rested her head against the wall. Her breathing was shallow. The days of travel, hiding, and the connection between them had taken a toll. Jace brought her water and watched the shadows dance across her face. You're fading, he said quietly. Not fading, she replied, her voice dry. Transferring. What does that mean? Our link was never meant to be one-sided, she said. The more your mind awakens, the more of me flows into you. Jace frowned. You'll die? Not if we reach the gate. Not if you finish what we started. He turned away, angry at the idea. He had seen so much death. Too much. He had told himself he wouldn't care again. That war had taken enough pieces of him already. But now, he couldn't let her become another name on a forgotten list. Not her. Never her. That night Jace dreamed, not of battles, not of ships or blood. He dreamed of stars, millions of them, forming patterns only his soul seemed to understand. And in the center of them, a voice, not speaking, but singing, not calling for war, but peace. He woke up sweating, light pulsing from the mark on his palm. It was spreading, now up his arm like silver veins. His heart beat in rhythm with it. Scyllari was already awake, watching him. "It's time," she said. But before he could answer, the floor shook. A rumble. Not from a storm, but engines. Big ones. Jace rushed to the outer window. In the distance, silhouettes moved. Human strike transports and alien carriers. Both forces at the same time. Both closing in fast. They weren't coming to talk. They were coming to end this. "They'll trap us inside," Jace said. Scyllari stood slowly, her legs shaking beneath her. "Then we don't stay inside." She pointed toward a hatch behind the far console. "Beneath this station is a tunnel. It leads to the forgotten rails. The path will take us under the ridge, to the canyon mouth." Jace grabbed what little supplies they had and opened the hatch, but just before they climbed down, Scyllari touched his chest. "Listen," she said. "To what?" "To you. You're more than bones and orders now. You carry something vast. And it's waking." He looked into her eyes. Even weak, even hunted, she was not afraid. And in that moment, neither was he. They escaped just as the base was blown apart above them. The sound of explosions rumbled like thunder through the tunnel. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The heat of war chased them, but they didn't stop. They kept running. Two fugitives, hunted by every army in the galaxy, one marked by an ancient seed of light, the other bound by a song older than stars. They were not supposed to meet. They were never meant to survive, but they were still here and together. They were running toward something no one else understood. Something hidden. Something powerful. Something waiting to be awakened. The last message of the stars. The wind howled through the canyon like it remembered every scream the war had ever stolen. The twin suns above were setting behind cracked mountains, casting long shadows across the rocky walls. Jace and Scyllari moved slowly now, not because they wanted to, but because their bodies were reaching their limit. Jace's breath came in short bursts. The glow from his arm had reached his shoulder, crawling like living light beneath his skin. Every few minutes his fingers twitched on their own, reacting to signals he didn't understand. And Scyllari, she was weakening. Her steps had become unsteady, her voice softer. Her silver hair no longer danced in the wind. It just hung, tired, as if gravity had grown heavier around her. But still, she smiled. Every time Jace looked at her, she smiled, like she already knew the end but didn't fear it. They stopped, beneath a sharp overhang where ancient stone met a wall of black metal buried in the canyon. It looked like part of a ship, but older. Smoother. No markings. No panels. Scyllari knelt beside the wall and placed her hand against it. Nothing happened. Jace stepped closer. "This is it?" She nodded. "Yes. The gate sleeps here." "Then why won't it open?" "Because it doesn't open for me," she whispered. "It only listens to you." He stared at the wall. It felt like it was humming, just beneath the surface, as if something inside was aware of his presence. He stepped forward and pressed his palm to the surface. The spiral on his skin pulsed brightly. Then the wall began to glow. Lines emerged across the surface slowly, like light crawling through veins of glass. Symbols Jace couldn't read lit up, not in rows or blocks, but in circles like ripples in still water. A soft sound filled the air. Not a siren, not a machine's hum, but a voice. A human voice, speaking in perfect English, but one Jace had never heard before. "To the one who carries the seed, welcome." Jace froze. The voice continued. "You are the last echo of a dying memory. You are the vessel of what remains. If you hear this, the war has failed. The stars are breaking, and hope must be replanted." Solari sat beside him now, watching the wall with shining eyes. "They left this message for you," she said. The voice kept speaking, its tone calm, but heavy. "You were not born to destroy. You were born to remember. Inside you is the map to the truth, the original design, the pulse of harmony that once guided the stars. If used with violence, the seed becomes fire. If used with trust, it becomes rebirth." Jace's body trembled. Inside, his mind, visions exploded again, but faster, clearer. Cities floating above oceans, giant trees with leaves of silver, machines and living beings creating together. Laughter from species he had never seen. And then, silence. Darkness. War. The collapse. He gasped and fell to his knees. Solari caught him. "The visions are almost complete," she said. "Your soul is catching up to what it always was." "What do I do now?" he asked. "This is too big. I'm just one man." "No," she said softly. "You are not." She placed his hand on her chest, right above her heart. His mark flared with light. So did hers. For the first time, Jace saw the same spiral glowing just beneath her skin. Smaller, fainter, but real. "You were never alone," she whispered. The wall split open with a hiss, revealing a chamber within. Not a room, not a weapon vault, but a dome of starlight. Inside, hundreds of floating shards moved slowly in the air. Mirrors, fragments, pieces of data encoded in glowing threads. They pulsed gently, like a living brain suspended in space. Jace stepped forward. The moment he entered, the fragments gathered around him. They began to form patterns, not just images, instructions, a map, a signal. A pathway through space that didn't yet exist and but could if followed. He turned to Solari. This could end the war. If they saw what's here." She nodded. "But they won't. Not yet. They will only see danger. They will fight over it." "Then what do we do?" Solari walked beside him and placed her hand in his. "We become what they fear." "What do you mean?" "They fear what they don't control," she said. "But what they need is someone who remembers the stars." Outside, the winds had changed. The human strike force and the alien warriors had both arrived at the canyon edge. They saw the glowing wall, the open chamber, the two figures standing in the light, and they prepared to fire. Orders echoed through helmets. Weapons powered up. But then, the air shifted. Every weapon flickered, every ship paused, and a wave of calm spread outward from the gate, like a breath across the battlefield. Jace and Solari stood tall inside the light, hand in hand, and for the first time in centuries, the war stopped, not because of orders, not because of surrender, but because something older than war had finally spoken. The whisper that changed everything. For a long moment, no one moved. Hundreds of eyes, human and alien, stared down at the glowing canyon from warships and gunships, from scout posts and rocky cliffs. The battlefield was frozen in perfect silence, as if the very sky was holding its breath, and in the center of it all stood Jace and Solari, surrounded by spiraling shards of light. They didn't look like soldiers anymore. They didn't look like fugitives. They looked like something ancient had awakened through them, something that didn't belong to either side, but to the stars themselves. The gate behind them pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. And then, Jace stepped forward. His voice, when it came, was calm. Not loud, not angry, but it traveled through the air like thunder. "We have both been used." His words echoed across the canyon, picked up by every translator, every helmet comm, every listening device. "Our leaders told us the enemy was dangerous, evil, monsters to be destroyed." He looked up at the hovering ships. But what if they were wrong? The soldiers shifted uneasily. What if this war was never about victory, but about control? Control over fear, control over knowledge, control over something much older than all of us? Solari stepped beside him, her silver hair lifted slightly by the energy flowing around them. We were taught to fight each other, she said. But the first ones, the ones who came before us, left behind truth, not weapons, unity, not commands. They planted seeds and waited. Jace raised his hand. The spiral burned bright. I am one of those seeds. The ground beneath him began to glow. A low hum rumbled across the rocks. Ships flickered. Engines stalled. Targeting systems scrambled and shut down. But no one fired. Not yet. Then the old generals, the ones watching from behind dark screens in distant bunkers, issued the order. Destroy them. Single human dreadnought turned its cannons toward the canyon, and so did a Varathi battlecruiser. Solari saw it in Jace's eyes before he spoke. They're going to wipe us out. She nodded, calm. They won't let truth be free. He stepped back toward the center of the gate's light. Then we give them no choice. Jace. She reached for him, but he turned, his eyes glowing now, fully, completely, as if the stars themselves had poured into his soul. This wasn't meant to end with silence, he said softly. This ends with a signal. Then, with a breath so quiet it could have been a whisper, he placed his hand on the core of the gate. A blast of white light exploded upward. Not fire, not destruction, but pure memory. It rose like a column. Into the sky, splitting the clouds, touching orbit, flooding every communication channel, every neural net, every implant, every ship. And in that light, they saw. Everyone saw. Millions across the galaxy. Visions of the first ones. Creatures of thought and harmony. They saw their cities, their wisdom, their warnings, and their final message. Not spoken in words, but in unity and love. The battlefield was gone, not destroyed, but changed. Weapons fell from hands, eyes filled with tears. Not from pain, but from understanding. The soldiers, human and alien, looked at each other, and for the first time truly saw. They were not enemies. They were echoes of the same ancient voice. They were the children of the same old stars. Hours later, when the canyon lights faded, only silence remained. No body, no explosion, just calm wind. But, deep in the stone, the gate remained open, and in every system, the spiral began to appear, on walls, on skin, in dreams. And somewhere, beyond the stars, a young girl was born with silver hair and a spiral glowing on her palm. Her mother whispered, softly as she cradled the child, "You carry the memory. You carry the light. You carry them."